You're listening to Catalyst for Change, and my name is Jessica Huckabee, your host. I started this podcast to learn what makes people resilient after challenging events and how they've used those series of events as a catalyst for change in their life. You'll hear stories of resiliency and strength, so get ready, sit back, and be prepared to be inspired. Today, my guest is Peggy Sweeney McDonald, the host, writer, producer of the newly launched Life in the A-Zone podcast. Peggy is an actress, producer, and author. She is a native of Baton Rouge and graduate from Louisiana State University. She returned to her hometown of Baton Rouge, Louisiana in 2016 from Los Angeles, California, where she was the owner of Superstar Events LA and produced unique and memorable red carpet, nonprofit, and corporate events. She is the creator of Meanwhile Back at Cafe du Monde, the hit festive food monologue show event, and the author of best-selling coffee table book, Meanwhile Back at Cafe du Monde, Life Stories About Food by Pelican Publishing. After the premiere Meanwhile show at the Myrtles Plantation in 2010, she produced the show across the country with over 150 shows, with 400 storytellers sharing their food stories in restaurants, corporate events, and for nonprofit events. Peggy has been a presenter at the Louisiana Book Festival, the Faulkner Society Words and Music Conference, the California Culinary Historians, the Louisiana Restaurant Association, Women of Infinite Possibilities, Passions of the Palate, and the Chili Pepper Extravaganza. Since being back in Baton Rouge, she has created events for the Louisiana Marathon, Southern Food and Beverage Museum, the East Baton Rouge Library, Preserve Louisiana, the Louisiana International Film Festival, and she's recently produced and starred in the Pulitzer Prize-winning play Love Letters at the Old Governor's Mansion. In 2019, she was honored at the Celebration of Women, and she's married to James McDonald, a realtor for Keller Williams. So thank you so much, Peggy, for coming on my show today, Catalyst for Change. And I really was interested in your story about being a caregiver for your mom with Alzheimer's. And maybe if you can just tell us what your life was before you moved back to help care for your mom.
Well, thank you so much for this opportunity. It's a pleasure to be here talking to you, Jessica. And oh, wow, it's like, where do I start? What happened? It was just like a life-changing moment. I had come back in April of 2016. I came back to Louisiana, where I'm from, but I had left here 36 years ago after I graduated from LSU. So I
Mm-hmm.
came back for Easter, and my sister, who's an attorney, Shannon, she had set up an appointment for us all while I was here for all four girls, because I'm the oldest of four girls. Yes, I'm the oldest sister of four of us, and my dad and my mom. We were all going to go to the neurologist. My mom had been showing signs of dementia, and we kind of knew that things were not right. But we knew that we needed to officially go to the neurologist. And so I was coming back for Easter. And so my sister set up this appointment. We all went to the doctors together, all six of us, which was kind of crazy, six people in a family for
Yeah.
for this appointment. And we went, and the doctor diagnosed her, and that was the official A diagnosis.
Mm.
So that day was tough. It's like the elephant is sitting in the room.
Yeah.
And then, when you're officially diagnosed, it's such a family disease. We laughed. Nobody said anything. I think we were all afraid if we talked, we'd start crying. And we went to lunch, and then we came home. And that afternoon, my husband called me to tell me he was laid off in Los Angeles, where
Oh
we
my.
lived.
Yeah.
So, and his dad had died of Alzheimer's. So it was just like, we had been talking that knew this was going on with my mom, hearing stories of back home. When I'd come, she seemed sometimes a little goofy and off, but, I wasn't there on a daily basis, so my three sisters live in Baton Rouge. So anyway, when my husband was let go and my mom was diagnosed all on the same day, of course, it was a life-changing day. And he said to me, I guess the universe just made a decision for us that we're moving back to Louisiana, because we knew what was going to come down the pipe, because seeing his father, progress with Alzheimer's and ended up dying, we knew
Okay.
it's a tough journey. And,
Yeah.
at this point in our lives, we knew we had to be there for my family. I'm going to cry about it because it's
Yeah,
bringing
it's
it all back.
okay.
But
Yeah.
we just knew that I just knew at this point in my life, I needed to be of service to my mom and my dad. So that, I flew back, ended up flying back to LA, and we closed up our life. We put our condo for sale, for
Yeah.
sale. We started giving away stuff, purging, seeing all our friends one more time, and doing all the LA things that we love so much, all our favorite museums and the beach. And we had a last gone away beach day, a gone away party with all our friends at the beach. We just told them to meet us at lifeguard station number 27 and bring whatever you wanted to eat and drink and bring your own chair. And we had an 8-hour day at the beach. My husband said, this is crazy, a gone away party for 8 hours, but it was great. People came and told us bye. And then we drove across country, and the weekend we got here to Baton Rouge, we arrived right when it started raining. And I don't know if you remember the huge flood, the
Oh,
Baton Rouge
yeah.
flood of 500, the 500-year flood, they called it.
Yeah.
We arrived that weekend. That Thursday night we got in. It started raining when we crossed the Texas Louisiana state line, and it didn't stop raining. And the rain came and washed, so much away.
Yeah.
And my parents' house is on the Amy River, so the water came up to their back deck, and we did evacuate, but we were very blessed. But so many people here in Baton Rouge had, lost everything. And my old neighborhood where we grew up, all
Yeah.
my parents' friends lost everything. So it was, I didn't have time to feel sorry for myself, because all these other people leaving my life in LA to go to the
Yeah.
other LA, Louisiana.
Yep.
So we moved in with my parents thinking it was only going to be for a short time, and then we'd get our own place. And then when we moved into this big house and saw how, my mom was slipping and how hard it was on my dad, we just stayed. And,
Yeah.
all our stuff's still in storage. We
Oh my
gave away,
goodness.
our life was totally different from living in LA. My husband was a stockbroker. I had my own event company, and we walked away and came to the unknown. But and it was weird coming home after 36 years, but I knew it was the right thing to do, was to be here for my mom.
And it sounds like there was silver linings that kept you very busy when you got there. So you didn't have time
Yes.
to really think about all that, that you've left behind, or all that was changing with your mom. So maybe that was a silver lining, or one of the blessings in disguise,
Yes. When I
that you
look
were so
back,
busy.
I had been the only daughter who left. I mean, I graduated from LSU. Wanted to be an actress. I moved to Houston, got my SAG card, did commercials, moved to New York, did some off Broadway theater and some
Wow.
commercial work, and met my husband. And then we moved back to New Orleans and got married in New Orleans. And then I started working a lot as an actress in TV and film that would come there. And so then I wanted to get to LA. So I'm one of these people who have moved a lot out of 36 years. I lived in all those places. In LA, we were there for 19 years. We had our own home. We bought a condo. We had put down roots there.
Yeah.
But when it's time to it was time to
Family.
go home. It was like,
Yeah.
it was time to go home. And it was hard because we didn't have time to grieve for our life in LA. And, we were here. It was I guess it was over 2 years before we ended up having to move my mom, almost 3 years by the time we had to move my mom into a memory care unit. And that was very hard. Of course, we did not
Oh
want to do
yeah.
that.
Yeah.
But, then she was only there for 5.5 months before she passed away. So this last year has all been about, since she died last year in July, so it's a little over a year, it's been about grieving for her and finally grieving for our life in LA. And, it was like all this
Yeah.
grief at once. And I was in a bit of a depression, and so I just started writing. I went and took this class at the Louisiana Book Festival, memoir class on writing, essays, memoir.
Yeah.
And I went and took it last November and it was a 3-hour class. And in that class, the instructor, who was amazing, Michelle Fulgate, she prompted us, gave us some writing prompts, and it's like, write 10 things down that you're ashamed of. And one of them was the way my mom dressed at the end, because my mom thought she was fine, but she would wear these, clothes inside out, not
Yeah.
dirty, not taking showers, and it would just be embarrassing to go anywhere with her. And we'd have these huge fights about getting her to change clothes and wear something appropriate.
Yeah.
So that was what I wrote down on this writing prompt. And then this instructor said, okay, start writing. So we wrote for 15 minutes. And then when I finished, and she said, who wants to read theirs? And I said, I will. And I read it. And of course I had tears at the end. And I looked up, and everybody else around this big table that was taking the class were all crying. And so was the instructor. And she just looked at me and she said, wow, Peggy, did you just write that? Or did you just write that? And I said, yeah, like, really? Did I just bring this in, like, in my notebook? I said, yeah, I just wrote this. And she goes, wow. She goes, you have to write this book because you have to share these stories. This was amazing. And
Yeah.
so I thought I'd write this book. And then the whole COVID thing happened, and the pandemic, and plus I had a hysterectomy in January, and my father had a knee replacement in October. So it's
A
been a
lot
really
of
tough
stuff.
year. And then the
Yeah.
pandemic, so I had like 24 chapters written, and something whispered in my ear, Jessica, and I think it was my mom's spirit, like, get these stories out now. You need to
Interesting.
share these
That's
stories out now. And I've been through the book journey. In 2009, when the economy was really tough, I had this idea for Meanwhile Back at Cafe Du Monde, life stories about food, which went into like a show that I did at restaurants where people would share their life stories around food. And I ended up getting a book deal with Pelican Publishing and have this beautiful coffee table book with 67 of the stories that people had written to be in my shows at these restaurants. And so my book came out in 2012. So I've been through that book journey, and it's a lot of work, it's a lot of work, and
it's a labor
it's
of
tough.
love, right?
And you have to get out and market it and do events.
Yeah.
And in the pandemic, I'm seeing all these huge authors, their books are coming out, and their book tours are canceled, and they just have to do things on Instagram and Facebook. And I was like, I don't need to wait 2 years, because I know the a book journey is like, it's a long,
Long.
before you hold that baby in your arms.
Yeah.
And I was like, I'm not gonna wait for that. But yeah, maybe there will be a book, because I'm not sharing all the stories, but I'm sharing stories that are kind of standalone stories that people can connect with. So I just had this idea. 5 weeks ago, 6 weeks ago, I had the idea, let me do a podcast.
That
I
is
started,
amazing.
I started looking up for Alzheimer's podcasts and saw that there was all kinds of experts telling you how to do it, and all kinds of interviews with experts. And one guy who interviews people who've been like me that have been a
Yeah.
caregiver. But there wasn't anyone like doing like narrative nonfiction podcast is what they call it. Sharing stories, and I'm all about stories. For years I was about food stories, and now I'm about stories of like life and loss and love and
Now,
laughter. And
can you tell me, can you tell our audience one of the stories, or a little bit of a hint about the context of
yes,
one of them?
so Life in the A Zone is the name of the podcast. And it's funny because I didn't know what to call it, and then I was like, I always say Life in the A Zone, we're in the A Zone now,
Yeah.
and for Alzheimer's. And I said, I'm going to call it Life in the A Zone. So I decided to start, the first podcast is a story called The Decision. And it starts when I am on the plane flying back from Los Angeles to Louisiana, and I'm flying to Louisiana to meet with my parents. They picked me up at the airport, and it's all about that day that I came back. And then my dad, reminds me we have to go to the neurologist in the morning. So it's all about my day coming back, and then going out to lunch with my parents after they picked me up at the airport, and how my mom was weird at lunch, and then that night, and coming to my parents' home and being in this bedroom here with my grandmother's antique furniture, and then the next day, the next day is the journey of like us going to the doctors and us being in the doctors, and then my husband telling me he got laid off, calling me and that night and saying how did it go?
Mm-hmm.
And I said, she's diagnosed now with a big A. And he said, well, my day isn't that much better. I just got laid off this job of 14 years as a branch manager for a stock brokerage firm. So it's all about that day.
Yeah.
And then it ends with, I'm with my mom watching Dancing with the Stars.
Yeah.
Which we love to do. And I'm laying on the couch with my feet in her lap. And I'm wondering, can I come back? Can we move back?
Yeah.
We're going to move back. And she's now comforting me, because I came downstairs and I said, Jimmy just got laid off. And she said, oh, that's terrible. And I started sobbing.
Aww.
And I'm crying, and I'm with her, and she's comforting me, which is beautiful, because now she's my mother again.
Yep.
For that moment, she was my mom, and she was fine. And I was going to be okay, because she was telling me I was going to be okay. So that's the first I started with, and it's sad, but it's bittersweet, because it's sweet and there's some funny moments in it. And then, I joined Podbean, I put it up, and like all of a sudden, like, oh my gosh, I'm in this podcasting world, and I'm sharing the story.
It's an
And
interesting world. Yeah.
it's an
Yeah.
interesting world, and you learn as you go, because I'm clueless. Like, I just ordered a microphone, and because
Yeah.
I was going to a studio, I went to a studio to do the first three. And it's
Yeah.
like, I can't be running across town and depend on waiting for them to edit it. I was like, I'm going to have to learn as we go. But it's amazing. Like, it's not
Yeah.
even 2 weeks, and I've had 500 downloads, and
That's amazing.
people are sharing it with other people. Like, my friends and family, of
It's
course, are
so
going to
needed.
listen, right?
Yeah. It's so
Our
needed.
friends and
Those,
family are
yeah.
going to hear it, and then they're like, oh, I need to give it to this guy I work with whose mother's going through this, or I need to send this. My neighbor said, Peggy, I'm going to send this to my sister, because her husband was just diagnosed. So people
Yeah.
are really, really, identifying and relating, and they're going on
It's,
the journey with me, but it's their journey too.
no,
Everyone has a journey.
it's so needed. And you mentioned, you talk about tools that you've learned along the way, and you share those with people. And can you tell us a little bit more about those tools? Because it's so needed to be able to hear from somebody who's been through it, what they've learned and what they've discovered that helps.
Well, my tools, number one, is prayer and meditation,
Okay.
and walking. Walking's a great meditation. You can walk, and when you're in the midst of the craziness of living with someone who has Alzheimer's, um, go for a walk if you can get away, even if it's for 10 or 15 minutes, and pray.
Yeah.
And if you have to go out and just cry, but just just moving your body and breathing can make a world of difference. Even if it's just walking around the block once or twice and coming back. I'm lucky, because we live in this neighborhood with this beautiful lake. And one of my upcoming podcast stories will be lessons of the lake, because there's so many lessons I've learned being out at that lake, and seeing the white herons and the blue herons and the turtles and the ducks and the Canadian geese. I mean, it's just connecting with like those animals, and seeing like the lessons of what they have, the spiritual meaning, looking up the spiritual meaning of those animals, and knowing there's a message there for me, and just kind of finding the messages that those little crumbs of grace along the way. Another thing, yoga, yin yoga on YouTube
Okay.
is, it's not a tough yoga. It's not hard yoga. Most of the yin yoga poses, or sitting on the ground or laying on the ground. And it's all about breathing and connecting to your body. That has
Yeah.
helped me so much. My church, had a couple of different churches I attended out in LA, and back here, I'm connected with some churches, and, now that they have all these churches online, that's been helpful. Um, Bible study. My sister was in a Bible study at another church, so I went there with her when I first was back, and support groups, and at least having, friends that you can really share with, that understand, and that you can talk about the good and the bad. A lot of people they don't want to hear about it because
Yeah,
it's
it's hard to find
scary.
that. Yeah, it's hard to
It's
find your
scary.
tribe. Yeah.
And I have this beautiful friend I met when I first moved here, Leanne, and she is a nurse. So, she is somebody who under, understood me, and we would do daily gratitude lists. So we
Mhm.
would talk in the morning as she was going to work, and we'd say, okay, let's do a gratitude list. You go first. We take turns going first, and we do 5 things that we were grateful for. And, they say when you do a gratitude list, it changes something in your brain. It changes you.
Yeah.
And so doing those, and I don't have to do it in the morning. Sometimes I have to do it at night. Sometimes if I'm just having a bad day, I'll just like, okay, let me do a gratitude list. My husband and I'll do it together. And another thing is hugs. My husband will come up to me and he goes, "You look like you need a 22-second hug."
22 seconds. Now, is there a science behind why it's 22
I
seconds?
read somewhere, who knows, that
Yeah.
there's science that a 22-second hug changes the chemistry in your body.
Oh,
So
interesting.
he will come and hug me, and I'll try to pull away, and he goes, "No, I'm counting." And the 22 seconds, it resets, and you walk away feeling better. So that's
I
the
like
gratitude
that.
list, and the 22-second hug. Are things that are like really important, and eating right, eating
Yeah.
right. And, my whole family, it's weird, but we all reacted differently, and our denial chipped away at different times.
Hmm.
And I think, of course, my dad and I, we had so much denial, but it chipped away faster than other people,
Yeah.
or my mom's friends. They were like, "Well, she's okay. We have meat for lunch, and she seems okay. She's quiet, but she seems okay." But once you're in the house with it, living in the A zone, it's a
It's a
whole different
different,
thing. It's up and down, and and
yeah.
I felt like I was going crazy. I ended up going to my mom's general practitioner and saying, "I need help. You know, I can't do this alone. I need help. I wasn't sleeping." And she said, "Well, you're living with Alzheimer's. You're depressed.
And what did she
You need."
recommend?
Well, I ended up, getting on some antidepressants and getting some sleep aids, which, I use periodically. But she said, "You need rest, Peggy. You need to take care of yourself. You can't take care of your mom if you can't take care of yourself."
Because you're always worried about what she's going to be doing, if she's safe, if she's
Is
comfortable.
she going
And
to walk out of the house?
hmm.
Is she, because sometimes she would, and we had to put the alarm on.
Yeah,
And I have a whole story. It's, about walking away. That's the name of it. That'll be coming up like later down the road, because I'm really starting the podcast the beginning, the beginning stories where she wasn't that
that's
bad.
good.
And it'll get, the progression will be there, and my progression and my feelings, because this podcast, like someone said, "Well, it's really not about Alzheimer's." I said, "Oh yes, it is. It's about a family going through Alzheimer's. I'm not an expert about Alzheimer's. I'm not going to tell you how to do it, because you can read about how to react and stuff, but when you're in the moment, some of that goes out your head. It just flies
Yeah.
out your head, and you're just like in the heat of it, and you're doing the best you can."
And
And
it's
so
really,
that's
yeah, really powerful
that's
to hear from the caregiver, the family caregiver, because it's so important to help people feel like they're not alone.
absolutely. And writing has been a great thing. Journaling, write down, if you're in a tough time, having a tough time, just get out an old notebook, or buy a Dollar Tree notebook, and just write your feelings. And because out of that will become, you'll find so much hope, and you won't be just writing about the bad times. You're going to write some good times too. Like, I remember writing, okay, today I had a good day. It was a good day. You
Yeah.
know, there was this one day that I took my mom out in the backyard and we took pictures in front of the azalea bushes, and I made her put on a pink jacket, and we were laughing, and, and it was like a pink cloud moment. And that's
Nice.
going to be another story all about that day. So, these stories are about life on life's terms. And
Because there's still
it
so much beauty in living with Alzheimer's. There's still a
there
lot of
was.
beauty.
And now that I look back, I'm like, oh my gosh, I'm so grateful to God that, because that it all happened the way it did, because it was supposed to happen this way. We were supposed to move back. And it was like my husband kept reminding me, we didn't move back to Louisiana for careers or houses or new cars or new friends. We moved back because you wanted to be of service to your parents and be
Yeah.
there for your mother. And we were. And he says to me all the time, you were a good daughter. You were amazing. And, you know, I'm going to look back years later and just say, thank God we
Yeah.
took that step to move here and be here. Because if I had watched this from across the United States in LA, I would have not become the person that I am today. I'm so much stronger. Um, I know what's important in life now. It's not
Yeah.
about the houses and the cars and the outfits and the vacations and it's just about family and love. And
That's,
those are the things that during the pandemic, thank God I had support systems around me through all this journey with Alzheimer's with my mom and the right friends, because so many people now are thrown into the pandemic and they're having a tough time and they're having to find their own support system. But, I'm able to say, okay, life on life's terms, this
yeah.
is the way it is right now. And just being an acceptance, acceptance is the key.
Yeah.
Accept right where you are and breathe. I had this minister in LA who taught me about meditation, and he'd say, just say in your mind, be quiet and just say, God is the love that I am. God is the love that I am. Just repeat it to yourself. And then you'll finally get to a place where you can stop saying that little mantra and just come to a place of like quiet stillness. And in that stillness is where, you hear those nuggets of what's next for you or what you need to do or where the peace is or that next
Yeah.
little step. That still small voice will speak to you if you can get quiet. So one of my favorite things is like when I'm having a tough time, is just putting my hand on my heart and breathing and saying, God is the love that I am, or God is the peace that I am, or God is the grace that I am, and repeating that over and over until I get to that place where I can just concentrate on my breathing and just be in that silence. And it's a beautiful thing when you get to that silence where you can just be still and listen.
Yeah. Oh, that's powerful. That is really powerful. Now,
Thank you.
yeah, I loved hearing your story, and I'm looking forward to listening to your podcast, Living in the A Zone. Do you think there's anything else that maybe we haven't covered yet?
Well, you know, I think it's really important for people to share their stories. A
Yeah.
lot of people don't talk about it. So I'm very I just hope that I'm an example that now that I'm sharing my stories and writing my stories, like every family has a story, every person has a story who's gone through anything with their parents or loved one or our child. If you've been a caregiver, you have something to give, and share your stories. Tell the good, the bad, the ugly,
Yeah.
with other people, and write, because writing is such a gift. I mean, even if it's just for you to
Hmm.
share with, your best friend or your husband or your family, there is something really important. And seeing all my nieces and nephews connecting to these stories, which was about their grandmother. And my niece, who is like 27, she goes, I think Aunt Peggy's going to help so many people with these stories, you know? So I just think, you know,
It's
it's
true.
very powerful to
Yeah.
share exactly where you are and not just sugarcoat and say, I'm fine. Even
Yep.
when you're, you know, if you're not fine, just be honest and share with somebody, because they're gonna share what's going on with them. And I think that's what's really important right now in this pandemic is I think everyone's there's like this low grade depression, you know,
Yeah.
just circling around all of us right now. And because we don't know what's next. But if we can connect with another person on a daily basis and share what's really going on in our hearts and in our minds, I think that's where the healing for the grief is. And
Yeah.
we're all grieving. Everyone's grieving right now for the life that used to be.
Yep. That is so true. That is so true. Well, thank you so much, Peggy, for coming on my show today and sharing your words of wisdom and your wonderful stories. And people could find out more in the show notes about where to locate your podcast and hear about your book, because I really want to look up that book that you wrote that came out a while back. That sounds really
Yes.
interesting.
Meanwhile, back at Cafe Du Monde, Life Stories About Food. It's on Amazon and Barnes and
Yeah.
Noble. But yes, people, please follow me on Twitter and Facebook and Instagram. I'm there, and Peggy Sweeney McDonald and Life in the A Zone. You can find it. And thank you so much, Jessica. It's just been such a privilege to spend some time with you, and I'm honored that you invited me to be on here. And you know what? We're all trudging through this together, and it's because of people like you that are, you know, bringing people on, because I listen to your show, and it's just like these stories, these other people's stories of resiliency and being able to keep moving forward and having this catalyst for taking your pain, and it jumpstarts you into another realm of your life. And who knows, we're just all trudging this a day at a time, but it is a
Yeah.
gift to be able to share with other people. Thank you
And
so much.
your story is definitely a gift. So thank you so much. And for those kind words as well. You've been listening to Catalyst for Change, and my name is Jessica Huckabee, your host. Join us next week for another story of resiliency. And please subscribe wherever you listen to your podcasts, and feel free to leave me a comment or email me at catalystforchange20@gmail.com, or on Facebook, we have a page at Catalyst for Change Resiliency.